Hey guys, before we get to the episode today, let me tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, I like Anchor because it's free. The Joshi Pod is a passion project of mine, and free is a good word when you're working on a passion project. It's also really helpful because there's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. I had zero experience podcasting before I started this podcast, so Anchor's very easy to use tools were very helpful for that. Also, Anchor will help you distribute your podcast. You can go be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts from pretty much. And you can also make some money on your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Either go to anchor.fm to get started or download the Anchor app, guys. Start your passion project. Get going. Do what I did. Go to Anchor. Start your own podcast. Let me be a guest. All right, guys, bonus episode of the Joshi Pod. Super excited to have my friend, is it senpai? Can a guy be a senpai? I don't know.
I think so.
Okay, you're my senpai, my podcasting guru, my buddy, my friend, my pal, my big paw on a pup, JPQ. Thank you for coming back onto the Joshi Pod.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. And a lot of kind words. I'll stick with friend, pal, chum. Any one of those is good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But no, he, as I've stated before, he's one of the guys or the main guy really that kind of showed me the way early on in the podcasting game, and I appreciate him. And I wanted to bring him on kind of to chit-chat a little bit about the man himself and talk about his wrestling fandom. And later on, we'll chat about some Stardom. I've been a little controversial lately about my opinions on Stardom, and we'll get into that. But JPQ, let's talk about when you first started watching wrestling.
Yeah, so I was a WCW guy back in the day. So this was probably 95, 96, somewhere in that range. It blurs. But it was Rey Mysterio. Now, I had friends that watched, WWF Superstars or, any of those types of shows early on, and it never really gravitated towards me. But once Monday Nitro took off, and we had like the likes of Rey Mysterio and Four Horsemen on there, it was that I kind of gravitated to that. I think aesthetically, it was a little bit more clear picture. I think there was the fireworks and the pyro, and Tony Schiavone going nuts, and I gravitated towards that production more than WWF. To me at the time was always very smoky. Like they didn't have the a way of clearing the air as well as WCW did. And as a kid, I kind of preferred that cleaner aesthetic when I was watching it, which then led me down the WCW path.
So what part of the country did you grow up in?
So I'm right outside Philadelphia, and I've lived there my entire life. My grandmother was a big wrestling fan out of Baltimore, which is where I was born, but spent most of my life outside of Philadelphia. And yeah, like we grew up on the ECW and the tape trading and things like that. But prior to all that, like when that was still kind of getting up and running, it was WCW on Mondays and Saturdays at 6:05.
Did you have conversations with your grandma about wrestling at all?
Yeah, well, we actually watched, unfortunate, when Owen Hart passed in the ring. We were watching that pay-per-view. That was like live for us at her house, and she was just a fan. She treated it like stories. She was one where to her it might as well be a soap opera that's on at noon, during the weekdays.
Yeah, that's what my mom was for me. So very similar. Got us into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So after WCW, like, were you like a super nerd fan? I mean, I say that with the most respect because I'm a super nerd fan myself.
Of course.
But were you like a super hardcore, buy the magazines, like look everything you could find, do whatever you could?
Not really. I was more of a closet fan for a very long time. It was I got into it with my twin brother, and my dad placated to it a lot.
There's two of you?
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, we're fraternal, so he looks nothing like me, and he's not on the social medias or anything. But yeah, I have a twin brother.
A revelation here.
That's breaking news. But only on the Joshi Pod.
So you were a closet fan. So
yeah.
When did you come out of the closet, you think?
In a sense. Man, I probably a couple years ago. Like really, and I think really what it was is that I didn't really have anybody. Like growing up, it was late '90s, early 2000s. Like the internet was a thing, but forums and chat boards, and yeah, you're on them, but like you're not consistently trying to make a name at that age. You're just kind of on there and you're kind of seeing what the old scuttlebutt is, right? And it was one of those things where so my brother fell off from watching it, and I didn't spend enough time harassing my parents about taking me to things. So it was just kind of like on Mondays and Thursdays at the time. I would just watch Raw and SmackDown accordingly by myself. And it was just one of those things where it was just like that's what John was doing on Mondays, and that's what John was doing on Thursdays, and that kind of kept going until through high school and through college. My roommates were into it, but it was just kind of like one of those things where it's like, I had some shirts and I had a little merch and, I had some money. So I'd go to independent shows by myself and things like that. And I'd meet people and create a little network. But for the most part, I was kind of like traveling by myself. I was kind of a loner in the game for a very long time until I got on wrestling Twitter a couple years ago. And that's really kind of where, I had some things to say because I haven't been able to talk to anybody about it forever. And from there, I just kind of took off.
I'm curious, what indies did you go watch?
So I was a big CZW guy back in the day. So when Danzig was big, well, not that he's not anymore, but you know what I mean. Like when he was on fire for CZW, I was there a lot. Shikara, down in at the Wrestle Factory in Philly was another one that I would fancy a lot. And then there would be like these random New Jersey, like up in Asbury Park, you see Ruckus, and or the early days of Amazing Red, and people like that, up and down. Then I never made it to New York. Never went to New York and never went down to Baltimore to see Ring of Honor, like down in the home of ROH. But, it was Ring of Honor would come by. I would check them out from time to time. Saw some pretty decent matches there. But yeah, my home base was always Shikara and CZW just because you were right there. You know what I mean? Like it's 40 minutes from the house. You can go anytime pretty much and get a standing room only. And then you're out, you find yourself outside watching people jump off warehouses. And you're like, holy shit. It's like, this is something else. So those are my big ones back in the day.
Did your perspective on wrestling change after discovering indies? I mean, did you watch WWF the same after seeing independent wrestling?
Yeah. So I always kind of looked at it, and I still am this way to this day. They're two completely different things, right? Yes, it's still pro wrestling. All these, but there's nuance and there's differences, and it's not the same, right? Like it's like music, right? There's classical, and then there's hip hop, and then there's rock and roll, then there's alternative, and so goes down the list. Well, that's how I looked at wrestling. So once I started to digest different styles, it wasn't like, well, I prefer this over that, so this sucks. I'm not going to watch this anymore. It was more of like, okay, well, this is one classification of professional wrestling. This is different, right? Now, granted, you got to remember, I grew up on Southern wrestling in WCW. WWF was completely different, and then I had ECW in my backyard. You know what I mean? So it's like you kind of early on, you'd watch USA, you'd watch TNT, and then you'd watch Public Access at 2 a.m, and you're watching New Jack jump off a building, or off an awning onto people. You just got a different acquired taste to all these different types of styles and promotions and unique selling positions of these promotions and all these things. So, by the time the indies came along, I'll tell you this, the energy is probably the most different, right? Like if you're at a Raw or you're at a pay-per-view for WWF, like there's this energy that's just electric in the whole, you have 30, 40,000 people, kind of jive the same way. Well, at an independent show, it's more intimate, right? It's like this carnal kind of like there's a tremendous amount of energy, and it almost matches that of 40,000 people, but there might only be, 75, 85 people at this event, but like everybody's like still focused on the same things, and everybody's kind of in it together, and it's very like it's like going to a concert at the old TLA, standing room only, where it's just like you're there to see somebody that hasn't popped off yet, and you're in on the secret. And that type of energy, it's unparalleled in wrestling outside of the independent scene.
So who are some of the people you saw before they popped off?
Well, American Dragon. Well,
Yeah.
American Dragon, obviously. Daniel Brian Danielson. Got to see him. I got to see McGuinness, Nigel McGuinness, back when he was still wrestling.
He was so good.
He was so good. Shikara had a lot of people come through. Claudio
Mhm.
Cesaro over in WWF or WWE. He was there for a while. Got to see who came up, who like left WWE. Sheldon Benjamin and Gable. Then when they were on the Independents, or not Gable, Sheldon Benjamin and Charlie
Charlie
Haas.
Haas, yeah.
Yeah, when they were on the Independents, that was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you about like Amazing Red is the one that stands out.
Mhm.
Because it was like, here's a guy that hasn't made it yet. He was before he went to TNA. He was running the Jersey circuit, and like you just looked at this dude and you're like, this dude's doing things that nobody's ever done before. And you see that enough times, and then you see him go to TNA and kind of do what he did there, and then his career since, and it's just like, talk about a guy that changed the game, like innovated what people were doing. This was a young Rey Mysterio type of caliber of wrestler on the independent scene on the East Coast, and nobody can take that away from you if you saw those matches that early in his career. It was awesome.
Were you like a merchandise guy, autograph guy, picture guy at all?
No, I can't say that I was. I wasn't much of a merch guy. I think the reason was is because I didn't know what to do with it. Like I didn't have stands. I was living at home,
Mm-hmm.
but I was never at home. I was kind of like living at home, but like my brother lived closer to work, so then like I would just stay at his house, and I had a room at his house, but like it really wasn't mine. It was just kind of like a room I was renting out for a while, and so I didn't really like, if I'm gonna nest, then I'm going to build up what I have around me,
Mm-hmm.
and for the longest time, it was kind of transient in what I was doing, whether it was like college or coming back and, living in this situation where I'm kind of bound. Like I have a room at my parents, I have a room at my brother's, and just kind of wherever I decided to go that night is where I was going to be. So I never really set up roots anywhere. So then I never thought to buy any merch.
So uh, a lot of us, myself included, at one point we got almost as interested as much as what's going on behind the scenes as what's happening in the ring. Did you ever have that? Did you ever come to that? I don't even know what the word to use, but to the where again, like the behind the scenes was as important as the in front of this and the front of the camera. Were you
Sure,
ever one of
yeah.
those people?
Yes. So actually, the whole reason I got on wrestling Twitter to start was I was someone that always enjoyed, not who won the title, but more importantly, why they won it. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't so much of pulling back the curtain to see the inner workings and how they put a match together and things like that. Although I did, I was interested in that, but it was more of like, why did the promotion make the decision to make this guy the guy or make this gal the gal? What goes into deciding to change, your tag team champions after three defenses, right? What is like what kind of gate are people looking at, that so they can decide whether or not the show is successful, and then how do they divvy that up to the wrestlers in the back, and what does that business model look like, and how does that differ from, say, a WWE, if at all? You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so from the business side, you pull back that curtain. I found a lot of interest in, and I feel like I had some things to say about it when I first jumped on wrestling Twitter. And that's kind of like, that was my foundation at the beginning. And then what I learned was that there's a lot of people out there that know more than me. And then you get to begin asking questions, and now you get to like share and learn at the same time. And then from there, it's just like, that's just kind of how I've treated it since I've been on social media. And you learn a lot if you're willing to listen. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like you're willing to take in a lot. But yeah, like I would say it's more of that side, but like absolutely interested. It's more interesting. It's more compelling to learn behind what's happening behind the scenes sometimes than it is, in front of the camera.
Do you think the hardcore, I mean, kind of this a wrestling philosophy thing, but do you think like so many people caring more about what's happening behind the scenes than what's happening in the ring has affected the popularity of wrestling?
I don't know about the popularity. Maybe I just think that I think back in the late '90s, early 2000s, it was lightning in a bottle. I
Mm-hmm.
just really do. I just think that for what that generation was at that time, with the type of product that was being put out, and the fact that there was competition, because competition is good, it just culminated in these two companies and people watching and it just exploding. Nowadays, I'll put more into streaming services and people not having cable and, different accessibility to different wrestling. through all these various types, for the reason why we don't see it as big from like the mainstream side.
Mm-hmm.
But I would tell you that, I don't think that the stories are as compelling, like the storytelling aspect. Like, why are we interested in what's happening behind the scenes? It's because what's in front of the camera isn't getting it done anymore. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
we live in a society of, we need to know, or we like to think we know everything, right? The age of information has made everybody a know-it-all. And the one thing we learned in grade school was nobody liked that kid who was a know-it-all. So you see these little dust-ups and conflicts and things happen, in all these different places, and you just kind of have to sit there and giggle, because if you can't ask, I didn't know that, can you help me understand that better? And, then you're going to find yourself in these like measuring contest of I know more than you, and it's like, okay, well, here's what I know, fill in the gaps for me, and I'll see if it makes sense or not.
Were you a Meltzer or Torch guy at all, or anything like that?
So I enjoyed Meltzer a lot. I still do, actually. He's, to me, now that I'm older, now he's more of a character of himself. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
still is great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he still is, in my opinion, like he's 1 and 1A with regards to the reporting that he does. I think he gets it right a hell of a lot more than he gets it wrong, and people just shit on him for the wrong reasons. But I think he also plays up the character a little bit. The
Mm-hmm.
Meltzer character, I think, he plays up. Where back in the day, because it was just a newsletter, there was no name to the face. It seemed a little bit, I'm going to say legitimate. I don't really mean it that way, but it seemed a little bit more, it was less personal. It was more information driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wade Keller, I came into later. The Torch, I came into later. But the one thing I've always liked about Wade is that he seems to be a hustler. You listen to him talk, and like, he's one that kind of grinds out, stories, and he's persistent, and I appreciate that type of hustle from people trying to get stories.
What about some of the modern guys? Do you like listen to or read any of the modern, like the John Pollocks or the Ryan Satins, those kind of people?
Yeah, so Satin, no, and there's really no bias there. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be lying if I said I did. I like Pollock. He's over at the Post, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I like him. I like what they. There's another guy over there too. I enjoy as well. Their podcast is very good. I enjoy that.
Who,
Um, what's that?
Wei Ting?
Wei Ting?
You like Wei Ting?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Broke up a little bit. I was like, wait, what are you saying? But no, I enjoy them. They're good. Voices of Wrestling can be good. They're a little preachy from time to time, but they got pretty decent information. And Fightful. I'll give a lot of love over to Fightful.com, because I know a couple of the guys over there, but again, reporting wise, they're not going to report anything unless they have two sources. And for the most part, I've seen them be wrong once or twice, and they always run the retraction. Um, they do a great job as well.
So how did you get involved in the podcast game?
Mm, good question. So I
I'm
was,
full of those. I'm full of
yeah,
those.
I know you. I listen every week,
Jeez.
every Friday on the Joshi Pod. You're asking all these great questions, all these crazy wrestlers. It's amazing, but but it's true. And Jim Valley. Shout out to Jim Valley. No, so I was on wrestling Twitter, and found a nice little network of people on the New Japan Pro Wrestling side, and that was cool. And so kind of harbored, talked to them a lot and things like this. And then there was this guy Wilfred, who is back on Twitter. Welcome back, Wilfred. And he kind of helped. He brought me onto his show. He invited me on. Didn't really know me too well. I didn't ask. He just offered. And that was big. That was a big confidence boost. And he trusted my opinion to be able to bring substance. And he brought me on for this neat little different type of podcasting he was doing. It was like a half battle of the sexes, but it was all opinion based, and it wasn't against one another. It was just two different viewing points and two different episodes, men on one, women on the other. And so that was really interesting. And then he brought me on a couple other times. And then from there, with the people that I knew, plus Wilford and his network of people, I was getting a lot of feedback to say, like, John, you should just jump into this. You know what I mean? And okay, well, I had a concept, and I knew what I liked, and I knew what I knew where I think I could be a little bit different. But really, more than any of that, I'm a talker. I can just get on and I can go for 45 minutes solo without even thinking about it. And the first couple episodes of NPA were a little rough. If you go back, there's a lot of umming and ahhing, and breaks and like hardcore like goofy editing and things like that of just trying to make it sound professional and all this.
Sounds like the Joshi Pod.
I know, right? But you find your swing after a while, and then
They're looking for mine.
yeah, right. No, you're there. You got that. You know, jump on, you do your whole thing. You sound great. We did that, and then it just kind of kept going from there. And now we're almost a year and a third, almost a year and a half in, and it's it's a lot of fun every Wednesday.
Tell people what No Particular Angle is. Describe your podcast, everybody.
Right. So it's a show about, whatever I'm watching at the time, right? I like compelling wrestling. I enjoy, checking out things that can be different, but then can be something that you're completely used to watching. And so every week on MPA, the goal is to talk about something in wrestling from the week prior, or a theme, or a storyline, or a promotion, or a wrestler, or a topic, anything. And then we just kind of grind out, what's happening and kind of discuss either where we think it's going to head, or where did it come from, or, what's going on. And the nice thing is that every week it's something different, for the most part. Some weeks we're talking Stardom. We have a heavy Stardom slant into NPA, and the reason is because that's the promotion I watch more than any other, which we can talk about later.
Seki Kashima Stan podcast.
Yeah, but for real, it's becoming that. Slowly but surely, it's becoming a. And I think that's just more out of spite of everybody else. I think it's when it's happening. But yeah, it's essentially becoming a Saki Kashima Stan podcast. But we talk about all these different things, and right now it's a lot of Stardom. And then but like we'll talk Ice Ribbon, we'll talk WWE every once in a while. We'll talk New Japan Pro Wrestling. We'll talk Ring of Honor. We'll take it to the independents. Defy is doing a lot of cool things over in Seattle, so a lot of that's coming up in the pipeline here very soon. And it's just like there's a lot of good wrestling out there that a lot of people aren't talking about because it doesn't get the clicks, it doesn't get the views, it doesn't get the downloads. But you're missing out if you're not trying to take in, everything. You can eat the same thing every day and feel satiated, but man, there's a world of flavors out there. You just got to jump in and try something new every once in a while, and that's what MPA tries to do.
Who are some of your friends or colleagues that you have on with you sometimes?
Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to go with the Queen of NE over at Queen's Court, # Queen and Pup Connection. Me and her drop every Wednesday as part of the Smart to Death Radio network. She is, one of my ride or dies. She's my number one, so to speak. Her and I got in the game around the same time. We play well off each other. We have a simulcast coming up this week, and we vibe very, very well. We're friends, not just on the internet, but we're friends in real life. I get along with her husband. She gets along with my wife. There's a great dynamic there. We've been to a couple shows together in New York. Saw New Japan 2-3 times in the last 2 years. So she's a lot of fun. Obviously, Joshi Pod. Hey, Eric. You come on pretty regularly now to NPA.
That guy's wonderful. I love him.
He's always smiling when he talks. He's always in a good mood.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Konnichiwa.
And then we got JD over at the Red Leaf Retrocast. Obviously, wrestling around the world every 2
Good guy,
weeks.
knowledgeable guy, yeah.
Very knowledgeable guy, Prime Minister. We got Jay over in Australia from the Smack It Down Pod. He comes on to talk Joshi. As well as, Mr. Warren Hayes from the Mr. Warren Hayes Show on YouTube. He comes on a lot to kind of help break down some of the more bigger topics. Like when we talk wrestling economics, or we talk about Vince McMahon and his decision making, we talk about the business of WWE and the decision making. He comes on and we kind of break down a lot of that type of stuff. You got Anthony over at Smart to Death, gold standard. He comes on a bunch and talks independent wrestling with me. I've got people for GCW that come on a lot too. It's a lot of fun, and you know what it is? It's just fans at the end of the day that are enjoying. Tiff over at the All Elite Pod, if we're talking AEW, she finds herself on a lot. Talking, a lot of independents from her too. She watches all the independents. She's going to all those $10 shows. It's a lot of fun with her. So yeah, it's a nice little network of people. I'm missing people, obviously Josh and Mags, and Conrad and, Headlock Talk and all those people as well. But it's a good community of podcasters. If you're interested in getting into wrestling podcasts, there really is a network of people out there to help you if you're just willing to, muster up the energy to ask.
And I can attest to that. Okay, my favorite episode. Let's talk about my favorite episode of yours recently when you had Carl Fredericks on from New Japan. That was pretty good, great get, to
Crazy.
speak with him. But talk about how that came about.
Yeah, so I gotta throw some love towards Wilfred for that. Wilfred, him and I were doing a New Japan show before he left Twitter for a little while, and it was called Yamabushi Cast. And he reached out to Spicy Carl and called him Spicy Carl. And it was like, hey, you're Spicy Carl. You just won the New Japan Cup. You want to come on the show and talk about it. Give us a holler. And he responded. Not only did he respond saying, yeah, I'd love to, but then he also made his name Spicy Carl on his Twitter for a while. Then Wilfred left. So then I hit him up and said, okay, well, Yamabushi Cast isn't really a thing right now. However, you're always welcome on NPA. Well, it took him 6 months before he saw that. And when he did, he reached back out to me and he goes, and that was in December. He reached out to me. I guess it was 3 months. He reached out to me in March and said, hey man, just seeing this now, but I'm down. And I said, all right, sweet. Let's put it together. And we put it together. Super nice guy. Jumped right into it. What I like about him is that he's really into, like when he was talking about working with Shibata, which just right there, it's worth its weight in gold, for people that are New Japan fans. But he's talking about working with Shibata and these quick explosive movements where, it's not just about learning grappling moves and wrestling moves, but it's really understanding mixed martial arts as a whole to be able to put on a performance that's believable to the people in the ring, or to people watching in ring. It's like, and man, you think about what Shibata was with his kicks and the way he kind of sold and his camera work, where he always knew where the camera was and he'd snap his head and stare at it, and all these different little nuances that Shibata had. I mean, he was the wrestler for a reason. It's like to know that he's imparting that not just on potential New Japan talent in the future, but then to do it in America, stateside. It's like, how can you not be excited for the LA Dojo and everything they're doing over there? And he was able to get into that, and that was really exciting.
So, do you like doing interviews, or are you more comfortable, or you prefer just doing your own thing with your colleagues?
I like both, to be honest with you. Interviews are a lot of fun because who doesn't love talking to professional wrestlers? I mean, who would have thought? You and I talk about it all the time, where it's like, oh my god, can you believe? And it's like if you can't get excited about it, don't do it. You know what I mean? If you're not excited about talking to a wrestler, if you've lost that luster and that passion over time, don't do it, because they're spending time out of their days to help market themselves, and your job is to market them or to make them more marketable than they were, and get their message and get their story out there. And if you're not willing, and you don't have the heart to put in the effort to prep your questions and put out a good interview with good audio, you're kind of wasting their time, and that's not cool. You know what I mean? But yeah, I enjoy doing the interviews. I'm a heavy editor. I do my interviews kind of different. There's a guy on C-SPAN back in the day called Brian Lamb. Brian Lamb would ask very direct questions without any follow-up. He never made it about himself. Most of his questions were simple sentences that, were probably 10 to 15 words or less, right? And he prided himself on that. And he'd ask very, very awkward questions. Like, he'd bring on an author who would have a book. And if he would just read the author's name and then the title of the book, then he'd go, why this picture on the front? And he would just let the guy go. And he would just let the guy talk. So when I do interviews, I try to follow the same suit, where nobody's there to listen to me. I will ask a question, then I will shut up, and I will let that person answer that question until their heart's content. And only when it's done will I then follow up with another question. I'm not going to, jump in and try to add to the conversation. I'm just going to right into the next one. And I've been able to create kind of a flow and a different style with that. Then I think that's a little different than other people out there. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different. And that's been rewarding when I've done it. I'm not one that hustles for interviews too much because I like to bullshit. So I find myself doing a lot of free form, fireside chats, if you will.
I don't have the skill to bullshit, so I have to guess.
You're better than you think you are. You really are. You're very comfortable when you're on an MPA talking.
I think it's you makes me comfortable, so that's probably part of it.
I'll take the compliment.
Any dream guests that you'd like to have on your show?
Yeah, I mean, Saki Kashima, number one, obviously. Just because the salt on everybody, once that happens would be fantastic.
If I ever get an in with Stardom, I'm gonna try to make that happen for you, dude.
Please do. Please do. I mean, we've met, we've talked, we've taken pictures together. I gave her a sticker, so it's not like she doesn't know who we are. But yeah, I mean that would be a fun one. But I think like if I'm going dream guest, just I'm probably Akira Hokuto. Just because she's the one that not only got me into women's wrestling, but she's really the one that kind of got me into Japanese wrestling in general. Again, do you think WCW back in the day? She was the first WCW women's champion, right? And she came out with a respirator, and she's just this badass, like fucking look to her, and this look to her, and she had a great profile, and she got in the ring, and then she just delivered, and back then I didn't have the luxury of going back to AJW or any of these Joshi promotions and seeing her work rate back then. I just had to go with what I saw in WCW, and she always stood out. She was over Alundra Blaze and Medusa, respectfully, over Bull at the time, and everybody in between. Like she just had an impact on me. And when I was capable of getting my hands on some Japanese stuff that wasn't death matches, right? Like
that's all the DVDs we could see, right?
That's all the ones we saw back then was the C4 matches and the barbed wire matches. But once I got my hands on some actual NJPW, AJPW, AJW stuff, that's really where my love came from. It all stemmed from her. So if I could interview her, that would be that's number one.
That's great. So when did you become a fan of Stardom? You have what, hashtag watch Stardom, hashtag, was it Stardom Fashion? What's your other hashtag you have?
Hashtag wrestling fashion. That's
wrestling fashion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that one took off. That one's crazy. But no, so hashtag watch Stardom. That was a funny one. Actually, again, I'll give credit to Wilf. Wilf, when we were doing the card, which was this different show, he said it once. He goes, he created it, but I enforced it. Right? Like I was brought on to run pretty much color for Stardom. We were doing the show, and I knew more about Stardom, so I would just take these segments over and just run with them. It was really kind of the preface of what MPA became over time. And, but it was always this hashtag watch Stardom thing. And then I just kind of became the hashtag watch Stardom guy. So I just kind of run with it. But everybody use it. You know what I mean? Get the word out about Stardom, because there's a lot of people out there that don't watch it. And it's crazy because it's the greatest women's promotion going right now, current day. So, which you and I
most popular.
Most popular. I would say most consistent too. Their 2019 was we'll get into it. But yeah, so I probably started watching somewhere around 2012, 2013, right in its inception. I had a couple buddies over there who were working as English teachers. They were sending me back some tapes and things like that. And then they got on YouTube. And I want to say that was 2014. I could be wrong on that. My years are always screwy. But they got on YouTube and they had like a pay per service thing on YouTube. It was like the old YouTube Red or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then you could buy their uploads from there. And then they came out with Stardom World, and then, Stardom World, and they had all the archives, which was fantastic. And then they had EO and 16 and everything that they were doing prior to that and then after. And that got all like crazy. And that was like amazing wrestling. And then EO leaves, Kyrie leaves, and EO leaves. And then we are where we are now. And it's a different era of Stardom than it was. But like I can tell you, like from the time I started watching until present day, it's engaging. It's had its bumps. It has its, it wasn't the roster certainly wasn't as deep as it is now. But like you live with these wrestlers, the Hazukis and the Momos and everybody, Azumis and SLK's coming up and all these people, Natsuko. Right, and everything that she's done since she came in and what she's doing now. Saki on her first run, Arisa's being part of the first class and then coming back. Mayu and, the greatness that is Mayu Iwatani. Kagetsu and Tam coming in and Hana coming in with her mom, Kyoko. And it's just, you see all that kind of form and where it is now. And, it's good, consistent storytelling. And they're doing 120 shows a year, and to have that type of consistency, now to have the depth to accompany it is huge. Couldn't always say that back in the day. But the consistency in the main events, the consistency in the production, it's always kind of been a standout for me. And they've always been able to keep my interest.
I just had a thought, and that's a scary notion, but I had a thought here. Do you think, I'm thinking for myself right now too, do you think we like the in-ring from Joshi because they hide their backstage in politics so much that we don't get to see as much or read as much or know as much about what's going on backstage that we can accept and just like what's going on in the ring more?
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. I mean when you don't have, these different layers of the onion to pull back on, you're only focused on one thing. It's like you give me an option, I'm going to play those options against one another. So what's more interesting? Is it Baron Corbin on Monday nights on my television screen?
You say Giulia?
We're gonna get there.
Actually,
I've actually thought of different analogies for those when we get that, so I came prepared. But is it interesting to see King Corbin do his shtick for the 90th time on Monday Night Raw, or is it more interesting to look behind the scenes and again the accessibility that you have too, right? Because it's not just what's happening behind the scenes, but then it's also the social media of these people, their histories, where they come from, their back runs, their interests, their hobbies, and then looking at that and saying, okay, well, I'm going to get to know this person on a deeper level, right? Yeah, like it can take you away from the in-ring product, it can take you away from what you're seeing. Joshi, on the other hand, especially stateside, the way we are, and being limited, being accessible, but being limited in what we're accessible to, you can only take everything on the face value. So if the face value is good and you feel like you're getting a good bang for your buck, or you're getting that satiation that you get as a wrestling fan from watching good wrestling, well, then you're not going to ask a lot of questions, right? And Stardom certainly does benefit from that. And a lot of the wrestling promotions out there do.
So one of my more popular episodes, I mean, we can kind of show like what people's American people or Western people's philosophy is. One of my most popular shows was Alex Gracia talking about Kagetsu. Mm-hmm. Alex Gracia is not the most popular person I've had on my podcast. I love her. She's great. She's going to be great. Yeah. But just talking about Kagetsu was probably my third or fourth most popular podcast that I ever had. So yeah, I think it kind of just shows what, even though we don't get it, that little tiny bit we do get, people want it, even in Joshi.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I wanted when she came on MPA. It was, I want to know everything. Like, tell me everything. And some of it we recorded, some of it we didn't. But it was like I had more questions for her than I've had for anybody. And she's only been in the game now for 18 months, maybe 2 years at this point. But yeah, like the reason that people are interested in Kagetsu and everything, and you did a great job with that interview, by the way, is because like you never get to hear those stories. And if you do, they're usually in Japanese, and when they get translated, they don't, it's not 100% accuracy on what's being translated. So for somebody who was there to be able to kind of give you a firsthand experience, it's like, man, as Westerners, we eat that up. We want that because we're accustomed to having it. So it's a hole that theoretically needs to be filled, right, in other places. But then more importantly than that, it's like, like think about the aura that if you're a Kagetsu fan, and everything that she meant, in Stardom and in the Joshi scene in general through her tenure wrestling. She's a benchmark for a lot of people that hope to get to her level one day and then be as consistent at it, or be as consistent when they get there as she has been. Not to mention head trainer and all the other things. So for somebody who's brand new coming in to be able to kind of tell about her experiences working underneath of her, training with her, and everything else, it's invaluable, right? And that's why, great prep work by you for asking those types of questions. But then more importantly, it's like you got it out there to the people, and that's great.
Well, this is not about me. I'm just kind of just talking about
no, but I'm saying like,
yeah.
It's like if it takes people asking and then getting it out and then promoting it for other people to gravitate towards it. You know what I mean? Like, and so by you doing that, it now allowed those fans who were, in a sense, like hungry or thirsty for that to get that information. And, you were able to facilitate that. And that's huge.
The Joshi promotions, what I'm experiencing, and maybe they're right, based on what we talked about before, they're very protective. They don't want, some of the companies don't want their people to be interviewed by people like you and I.
Right.
They want to keep the narrative the way they want to have it. They want to do that. Are they right to do that? I mean, to keep the purity of kayfabe and wrestling that they have over there. I mean, are you think it's good or bad for them to tell podcasts and other companies know that we don't want our wrestlers to be interviewed and asked open questions without, limitations?
I guess it depends. I'll tell you that on the surface, why wouldn't you want, your wrestlers to go on to American podcasts or any podcast? It doesn't matter where you are, but go on to independent podcasts and tell their story. Get a little intrigue for the promotion, maybe, increase your subs to your streaming service or Nico Pro or whatever. It seems like it's a win-win on both sides. The other side of it is a lot of these companies, they might not be working, with a big profit margin, and they're growing. There is a thing, there is something to said for growing pains. So you get too popular too fast, and you can't accommodate, the accessibility side or the distribution of your product, even through streaming services, to an audience that is looking for it. And now, and now you've created a market that you can't get into, that you can't tap, and that can cause some issues, right? Or you don't have the technology, or you don't have the infrastructure within the business to be able to grow to meet the demands of the consumers, and so by keeping kind of a little in things until you build enough capital to be able to do that could be part of the motivation. I can't say that for certain. It could just be a cultural thing, where they sit there and they say, like, we keep everything closed door, hands off, and this is our thing. And unless you're, either part of the culture or part of the company, you're not going to have access to this, because the more people that have access to this, the more we can't control the narrative. And the narrative right now is more important than the interview, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's frustrating it is to me sometimes when I get doors closed on me. I mean, I understand, I get it, I don't disagree with them, but so I see both sides, that, hey, I want to talk to everybody and you want to talk to everybody, but it's just maybe it doesn't make sense for them, like you said, to do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I'm with you in the sense that, like, one, the way they handle their business needs to be in a professional manner. When I reach out, or when you reach out, or anybody reaches out to these promotions, especially when you reach out to the promotions themselves, asking about, a little talent interview share thing going on, we reach out with the utmost respect. And we say, we use our, Misters and Misses and salutations and our proper grammar and our complete sentences and all that type of stuff. And we try to be as professional as possible so that they know that we're taking this seriously. And so when you're met with either a little bit of informality or a little bit of either brevity or curtness, it does rub you a little wrong, because it's like, hey, I'm just trying to help you, and there's that side of it as well. Or I don't know if these promotions respect, us to the level that we do them. Which, hey, I'm not saying that they need to. I'm just saying, like, it does rub you a little raw every once in a while, which, I think is fair.
So you're not making $1 million every week on your podcast?
Yeah, if I'm close a couple times, I really have. No, that's for-profit podcasting really isn't my bag now.
So that's mine too. I've not made a penny off my podcast, and I've spent way more on my podcast than I'll ever make it. I think to this point, but right. It's just, it's I guess getting them to understand maybe that this is a passion project for guys like us. Yeah. Sometimes it's maybe it's hard to translate to them. They don't get it if we're doing it for free. Why are we doing it? Maybe, like you said, maybe it's a cultural thing.
It could be. I mean, I haven't been over there, so I don't want to speculate either way. But I've been told a couple times by a couple different promotions, that getting your foot in the door is going to be difficult. So keep at it, but don't expect. And I was like, okay, well, what's the timeline? And they're like, years. You just got to keep knocking on the door. And I'm just like, okay, well, we'll see. But again, I've fallen into a couple fortunate positions to where I was talking to people I probably shouldn't have been talking to, that I thought maybe was an in, and they were just like, oh no, you're a cool guy. Like, we can chat, but this door is way closed. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, I appreciate the transparency.
So let's talk about the current state of. Let's talk just Stardom. Let's not talk about anybody else. Let's talk Stardom. You and I. You're Mr. Watch Stardom. So let's
right.
Hashtag Watch Stardom. Let's talk about Stardom. What do you think about the current product up to the pause button that got hit?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they had a lot of momentum. They had a lot of stories in place, where I think a lot of their issues that they have, and I don't, issues probably too strong. I think a lot of their question marks with regards to their storylines are all injury related. Number one, I think a lot of it stems back to the 5-star last year. But I think overall, not just from the depth that I mentioned before, complete rosters on the mains. Uh, every faction is covered, and they do a great job with it. And the consistency in the 120 show. You go back and you watch 2019 as a whole, and I'd be hard pressed to say that there's like one bad show on there. Like there's some shows that aren't as good as other shows, sure. And there's some fun shows and filler shows and weekend Sunday afternoon shows and things like that. But you go back and you watch, and it's good, consistent wrestling day in and day out from this entire roster, and it's amazing. And then you get hurt when you lose Kagetsu and you lose Hazuki at the end, and it's like, oof, that's a stinger, right? Because you had your next up and comer in Oedo Tai, your heir apparent, and then you had your leader of Oedo Tai and your head trainer, both balanced at the end of the year. Okay, and I get that it wasn't exactly the end of the year, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose them. You lose Utami during the 5-star. You lose Jungle during the 5-star. So now you have Konami and Hana. Konami all tournaments, finding yourself another final, and everything that's happening there. Your 5-star champion doesn't go on to win the title, and Hana was really hot at the time, and so you can make the case there. But then they bring in Giulia, and they brought her in a confusing way, controversial way, but a confusing way. And so then there's your program leading into year end, and now how are you going to get the title off B? And then you decide to put it on Mayu, which is a great decision now that you got the Bushi Road acquisition that happens. And so there's this tremendous amount of momentum, right, for Stardom going into 2020. And I think they were succeeding at the beginning of it. We had a nice heel turn from Saki Kashima that put her in a position to join Oedo Tai. We were able to thin out stars, which I think was big. We had a new faction in Donna Del Mondo fortify over the course of the first 2 months of the year. And, we saw B leave Queen's Quest and join Oedo Tai as well to kind of help strengthen up, the ranks there. And so I think we had some good positioning of some enough changes to make it feel different, but nothing too drastic to where it took you away from the 5 factions that they now had. And then coronavirus happened, right? And then everything just shuts down. And then you learn Arisa's probably injured, right? And that she might not come back. And I don't want to speculate on that because nobody's actually directly come out and said that, but man, it's looking that way. It really is. I can't. I don't know if it's
sickness, injury, illness, whatever. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, she just hasn't been around. She's not on the Zoom calls. She's not being marketed through Stardom. Really, not too much. She's doing a lot of stuff with her band, so she's out and about. Like she's doing things.
Is it possible she's just not happy with Stardom?
No, I don't think that's it. Because she's being pushed to the moon right now. I mean, you and I were talking about it, remember, in the review show for how like it was 1 and 1A. She was positioned like nobody was going to touch her. You know what I mean? Like she could go all the way to 2020 or December 2020 with the white belt and win the red belt. You know what I mean? Like we saw a pathway where that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, there's no information on it either. So this could all just be like heard like there. I'll just do your band thing because you're going full throttle when you come back. It could be that easy.
Mm-hmm.
It could go either way. But I don't know. I got a bad feeling about it. Saki Kashima's momentum just completely derailed. She has that great heel turn, and that was executed very well, mind you. On Mayu, then she gets the main event of the No People Gate, which just adds to the trolls out there like JD saying the only time she's going to main event is when nobody's in the building.
Just prove she can't draw.
Right, to prove she can't draw. And so that's disheartening as hell. But she goes out there and puts on a fine match. But now she finds herself like she's still ranked.
Should she have won?
Yeah, she should have won. She should have found a cheekish way to win because that's what Oedo Tai does.
I agree. I think she should have won as well.
She should have won. Like it's crazy and I'm so surprised she didn't because one, like it took all the power out of me talking. But two, man, like are you talking? If she would have beat Mayu prior to right when COVID happened, it's like the type of chatter that I would have on my side against the likes of Jay and JD and yourself and everybody else out there would have been fantastic. It would have been great. It would have been a great 6 weeks all things considered, right? But yeah. So anyway, I think they're doing well. Obviously they're leading the pack. The Bushi Road thing's there. I think the interesting thing about the Bushi Road thing is that you're starting to see that a lot of their decision making isn't their decision making anymore. And this might be the first real time. Now, granted, unprecedented circumstances, but we're starting to see that, as much as I'd like to put a lot of these decisions that they're making on Rossi, I don't think it is. I think it's Bushi Road sitting there saying, you're not doing this, or we're going to pull back on this, or we're going to hold back on this because, we now own you. And we're starting to see that. And I think that it certainly is a different vibe than last year when it was strictly owned by Rossi.
So I'm adamantly against Giulia's push to the top right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't think she is talented enough to be where she's at. I compared her to Baron Corbin on Twitter,
yep.
Which some people agreed with, some people didn't agree with.
Right.
So what do you think about the push for somebody like her, who's an outsider, who's not as gifted in ring? I don't even know if she has the charisma of some other people as well, in the company. Just her push and what it means to like the future of Stardom.
Yeah, so correlating what Giulia is in the future of Stardom, I don't know if I can do that. Because I don't see a correlation between the two. I see her as an asset. I see her as a hot commodity. I see her as somebody that can go in there and print some money, right, and be a star. And she's got star power. She's got money behind her. And you have money, they're going to put you in a position to succeed. I also think that they're leading into the controversy. Her coming over, and then the way it happened, it probably wasn't the best business practices by Rossi, but now Bushi Road owns that, and now they got to kind of have to figure out a way to make that work for him. Okay, well, this is the way you do it, right? And you kind of lean into her a little bit. You make her a faction leader. You put her in a program with Hana. You put some muscle behind her so that she doesn't have to be the one that carries the wrestling acumen of the group, and she can just kind of be the figurehead. And now you push her to the top, right? It's a lot like So you said she's Baron Corbin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always said she was Thugonomics John Cena. And like you got to remember that John Cena, that it was right after the aggression, ruthless aggression, John Cena, where he almost got fired, and then he became the heel Thugonomics. Not before he got over, but that beginning where he was getting booed everywhere, and he's wearing the opposite the rival jersey of whatever town he's in, and he's going out there and doing the schmarmy type of raps that are really bad at the beginning and all that type of stuff. But his wrestling was garbage, right? But slowly but surely, every week he was out there, people were starting to like him a little bit more, and people were buying into his disses, which were ridiculous, by the way. They were buying into that a little bit more, and just gradually and organically over time, he was built into something bigger than he was, that ultimately culminated at WrestleMania, where he won his first U.S. title against Big Show, and then he, blast off from there. I see the same in Giulia. I think Giulia right now is a figurehead of a very dominant faction where she is more of the rough and tumble, likes to do a lot of things outside of the ring, because in the ring she's a little bit compromised by having someone like Micah who can just kind of bury somebody with submissions and kicks and strikes. And then you have Shiori, who really is your worker of that group. Be able to come in there and kind of put in the time, right? She's like the Utami, if you will. She kind of comes in.
Hashtag Joshi Wrestling Dance Off. Hashtag Shuri Smile.
That's right. It's true, though. She is killing it on that side. It's her and SLK all day. But yes, she's got that type of vibe to her. And the thing I think that hurt her the most was somebody like you is they went away for a while. And now she hasn't been able to have enough time to kind of build the type of character she's going to be. She's only been wrestling for you can count it as 2 years now. I mean, I think she was a year in when she was an Ice Ribbon, and then she came over. So I can't imagine if she's hit the 2-year mark, she's just hit it, or she did a year somewhere and then came in. Anyway, no more than 3 years. And she's in there with people that have been wrestling for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. She's not as technically inclined. She doesn't work the crowd very well. She's a bruiser. She's a brawler. She goes in there and she's intense. It works when you're with Hana. It doesn't work when you're with Jungle, right? She's not big enough. She's not stoutly enough for that type of dynamic to work. So you need the help of everybody else. If she can, if her character can come along, and that's what I was waiting for, is her character going to evolve now that now that she won Cinderella and that we're going to move forward? Time will tell. But because we're kind of left with this incomplete character, and we know she has the Cinderella, and we know that if all this stuff with Arisa might happen, that she just wins the white belt, well, it's not going to be as compelling because we're not invested in her yet. And she really needs, to your point, she needs to be able to get us invested as fans into her as a person, as a personality, and her character, and really define who her character is. And then I think you'll get off her back. Until then, though, like, I don't know if I'd say Baron Corbin, because Baron Corbin knows exactly who he is, right? And he's a swarmy prick on purpose. But, she's incomplete, and she's pretty high up there. And if that rubs you the wrong way, yeah, I could understand that.
Yeah, in your comparison to Cena, I mean, you talked about it being organic and over time. This wasn't organic. This wasn't over that much time. I mean, she wrestled in the Tokyo Dome this year for Stardom.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but that was a showcase. You can't hold that against her. That's like Tam and well, it's like.
But it kind of tells me, if the other people you have on your roster that you're willing to put her out there as your representative of your company, it tells me work rate companies getting away from being a work rate company.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I could see that, but I don't know if you can put one dark match on. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a huge deal, right? That they won a dark match at Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome. But I don't know if you can sit there and say one match with one big signing, mind you, with a new company. It defines what they are going to be moving forward. I think it's that they see a tremendous amount of money in her, and they put her in there with good workers to help elevate her. Now, with that said, I have seen that match. I have seen that match now. I don't know if I can take one match and say, well, this is what they're going to be now moving forward. They could prove me wrong, and you and I could be sitting here 6 months from now, and we could say that this is hackneyed, BS, and they're only pushing the pretty people and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like,
That's a good segue. That's a good segue.
Yeah, right. I'm all about having that conversation. It's just I don't know if we're there yet. I can't sit here and say with all the good faith in 2019 that they're going to work away from their work rate workers as much in 2020.
So another observation I made on your show was that Stardom, I feel, is becoming a bit WWE-ish, where a lot of their people are looking a little cookie cutter. A lot of the same pretty, thin women who are a certain, they're glamming them up. They're trying to pretty them up to be beauty queens as well as wrestlers. Kind of how the WWE almost has. I mean, Otis is the outlier, I guess, right now, but but generally in speaking, I mean, it's a certain look for the guys. The Randy Ortons, for a while they had those guys that looked a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I mean, again, you've watched Stardom pretty consistently over the last couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they've kind of fallen into that. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that they all look alike. I would agree that there's no dump, like you would have in AJW back in the day, or any Hamuko right nowadays. But yeah, they don't have one.
I don't know if Hokuto would be on there.
No, I don't think. No, she wouldn't. But you had Mary Apache there at the back end of 2018. And she was there for a pretty decent amount of time. And then she's just been busy in Mexico. But she's still referenced a lot by Hana. Jamie's coming along. And she's working on like being that next Joshi giant. And looks like she's taking pride in being that forceful presence for them. And I think they have a lot of different styles.
She's slimming down. She's getting more glamorous as well, though.
I think she plays a lot into the beauty side, but I mean, I'll tell you that I don't even know if she's been slimming down. She's it's a good thickness. It's a good thickness.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But she's wider, than she was at the beginning of 2019 by like almost half. And I mean that in all due respect. It's not she's huge. It's not no. Like, she's physically putting on muscle. She's physically getting bigger. You know what I mean? Like, and she's becoming that type of wrestler. But I'm not disagreeing with you either. I mean, they definitely have more of a. They're not TJPW by any stretch, but they definitely have a certain aesthetic, a general aesthetic of the roster that they're going for. I don't necessarily think that means they all look the same. I think that like Utami isn't, she's not winning any beauty contests. Momo's not winning any beauty contests. And I say that with regards to like that idol vibe that you get from TJPW. You know what I mean? Where it's almost like porcelain doll kind of look to them. It's like they're not really playing into that. Yeah, you get the beauty makeup, you get the eyeshadow underneath. They're doing a nice job with the highlights and the hair to kind of really pop when it's important. They're changing the outfits to streamline them, to mainstream them a little bit. But really overall, this is a lot of stuff that Queen's Quest is doing is a lot of stuff that they were doing with EO in 2016. They just have more people they can do it with now. And I think the roster depth is really playing into that. You need these attractions when you don't have the talent, and when you have the talent, you don't need to go out there and find the dump Matsumoto's of the world. And I mean that with all due respect to Dump, because I love her. She's like one of my favorite people to watch back in AJW. But I think that's part of it. I would tell you it's a cop-out, Eric. It's a cop-out to say that they're WWE. You want to sell me on the fact that they're Ring of Honor? Back when Ring of Honor was good? Okay. I would be more inclined to listen to that, because I just don't think that Joshi is so niche as it is that if you're the top of the niche, you can't just equate that to WWE. I mean, if that's the case, then, AEW is the WWE of the independents, right? And Progress is they technically really are before they were bought out. They were the WWE of the UK scene, right? And WXW is the WWE of the. I think it's too easy to say that. Well, they're the WWE, right? But if you want to say Bushiroad is the WWE, I'm inclined to listen to that argument for sure. But I think Stardom as a whole itself, I think they're more of a Ring of Honor, right? Like they are, top of their niche, right? And they got a little bit of backing, and they have a little bit of financial support, so things that they don't have to worry about that other Joshi promotions have to worry about right now specifically. But in general, they don't have to worry about. So, they're a little bit more carefree, a little bit more relaxed. They're not, you could say that you could fear that they're becoming a little complacent in their business model, because they know that they can just kind of turn the key on when they come back into live shows and pick up where they left off, where a lot of all these other places need to do some, do some money generating through YouTube channels and live wrestling events and streaming services and all this other stuff. Okay, well, Stardom's already got that infrastructure set up, and now they have backing with Bushiroad, so they can just kind of sit on their laurels while everybody else is kind of hustling. If you want to make that argument, sure, I'm willing to listen.
But I also have the pull, yanking Giulia from Ice Ribbon, I think, is a WWE-ish tactic.
Sure.
It was a little not up and up, not how the business is done. They're very Vince McMahon-ish, like, hey, we're going to take your top stars and you see if you can survive or not, That's what I'm worrying, that it's becoming that they're going to not hold to traditions of wrestling, and it could be the end of the indies, for the smaller Joshi promotions.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Rossi doesn't have questionable business motivations. His track record isn't the greatest with the way he's screwed over talent in the past, and his just general demeanor. Like, he does some cool things, and then he does some really shitty things. It's the reason that him and Aja don't work together anymore. But so again, if you want to bring that piece in and say, well, that's very WWE-esque, I'm willing to compromise and say that, okay, I'll give you that one. But then you have to ask yourself, because that really happened underneath Rossi's ownership, not Bushiroad's. So can you really hold it against the Bushiroad Stardom the way that Rossi handled his business behind the scenes prior to buying out the company, right?
Well, I am of the opinion that Rossi is still in charge and has a bigger stick to swing with right now. That if he tells Bushiroad that this is the person to go get, they're going to go get what they want.
Oh, sure. I'm sure he probably has something to do with the talent side. I think that's fair.
And I'm not saying
Um,
Vince was wrong for doing this in the 80s. I'm not saying they're wrong for doing it. I'm just worried for everybody else that this could become, the one shop open for Joshi wrestling for a lot of fans.
I think if Mayu and Suzu head over there from Ice Ribbon, at people of that caliber, I would think I would agree with you. Julia, man, that one kind of came out of left field. That she really was the next star coming up in Ice Ribbon for sure. Um, you could make the case for her because she does have star power. If they start poaching some of this top talent from these other, Joshi promotions out there, maybe, yeah. Then again, like your argument, where I think it's a weak argument right now, I think is one that over time it can just be solidified. You know what I mean? Like I think it's one that can gain traction the deeper into this we go.
See here, I'm an old man, so I was around like in the 80s and
Right.
saw this stuff happening. And I just see the same thing happening again. That's where my perspective is coming from. It's
Sure.
I grew up in the 80s. I watched Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I watched all that kind of good stuff. I watched AWA. I watched all that kind of good stuff, and I said, oh, they did this. Huh, that sounds familiar. They did this. That sounds familiar. That's where my worry is that because I love Joshi, I want more than one Joshi promotion to survive and be successful. That I'm just a little worried right now.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think it's okay to be worried. And look, I'll be honest with you. Some of these Joshi promotions are going to last.
Nope.
Coming out of this, and a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but some of them might not have lasted in 2020 as it is. There's already rumors with Marvelous and talking to Stardom, and then a Rohawk coming over, or really coming back
Mm-hmm.
to Stardom. That there was, why, right? And it's not like them to do these, you know, these collaborative shows, but they were in a pinch because Saudi ended up signing with WWE, and they were able to reach out to Marvelous and get a deal done. But with a Rohawk coming over, but you can make the case that if Marvelous folds and a Rohawk comes over, and then you can get in Ice Ribbon's ear, although I think that would be a stretch. But if you could, and you pull and you pick off
That ain't
either,
happening.
right? Yeah, right. Well, no, it ain't. But like if for whatever reason, like same type of thing, where you pop off like a Suzu, and now you don't have anybody for Maya. Like, okay, well, again, it can only add to your argument over time if they keep picking up talent. I'll also tell you, and then it's crazy to say because it's competition, and so you always want to get the best wrestlers that you can. But I like the rosters right now of Stardom. I think they have the depth. Like it's hard. We were talking about this, me and Jay on NPA. Like, well, who do you bring in on a freelance level to kind of get the traction back up and running? Like, who do you bring in to kind of help fill out the undercard? With the people on tour, and I'm looking at the rosters, and I'm like, I don't think you really need to. And there's so many people now that are wrestling for Stardom. I think there's like 27 on the main or something like that. You don't need to bring in like the Layla Hirsch's anymore or the Bobby Tylers. Like they're going to obviously, but you look at it and you say like, yeah, I need Azumi to kind of take that next step. I need SLK to finally move her way up and graduate to the main event roster. What are they going to be doing with Saya Kamatani? What are they doing with Saya Aida right now? And how are they going to form and continue to build these stars and the interest behind these wrestlers the way that they were so successful at doing in the last 18 months leading up to 2020? You have a new crop and you have a lot of these little younger wrestlers that you need to start getting up and running. What the hell are you going to do with Itsuki? You know what I mean? Like Hoshino has nothing going for her at all, except that she's won like a match. And so what does her progression look like? And you have all these like little ways to fortify some of the back ends of these factions. Why bring people in? Now we know the answer. It's because you want to kill everybody else and you want to own more of the market share, obviously.
Yeah. Why can't Ricochet get on TV? Why can't Apollo Crews get on TV?
It's true. Yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm not saying like you need to do. I mean, Gensaki just got to the mid card for God's sakes. I'm not looking for these women to move up that much, but a little personality and getting Kamatani and gear that looks like she's part of Queen's Quest would be nice.
All right, JPQ. I appreciate your time. Tell us again where we can find you on social media.
Yeah, so I'm at Big Paws on a Pup on Twitter as well as at NPA Podcast. Every Wednesday, no particular angle, on any podcast, the service that you listen to.
Where'd Big Paws on a Pup come from?
So if you ever watched The Wire?
No.
What? It's one of the
Dude, we
greatest
could have a
television-
whole conversation about stuff I've not watched.
Okay, well, if you ever get in the mood to watch the best television show of all time, and I'm not even like saying that, like that's a legitimate thing. In The Wire, there's there's a guy named Bodie, and Bodie's he's a corner guy, and he gets propositioned by two other dealers, or the heavy of Marlon's gang, and Eddie pretty much shrugs them off, and as they're walking away, they call him Big Paws on a Pup. And I took that name from there, so that's where that comes from.
Nice. Well, again, brother, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being on the Joshi Pod, and everybody follow him on Twitter. Listen to his podcast. He's so good about talking about not just Stardom, talking about all wrestling. And give him a follow, give him a listen. And he's one of the good guys out there. So let's support him.
Appreciate it, man. And listen to the Joshi Pod. I love this podcast.
Thank you, brother.